to actually see, to follow Tim Curry from the makeup room. You know, here's darkness for the first time, walking with him on the gravel street of Pinewood, to enter into the soundstage of Darkness's Lair for the first time, and to see what actually Ridley Scott's hell looked like, was probably one of the most thrilling moments of my entire life. It was mind-blowing. I mean, this huge, beautiful fireplace with these giant, you know, flames that would come out of it, these huge columns and the giant doors, and Tim's chair that's actually, you know, comes half alive, you know, and to see him actually enter into that, it became like one of these things where you actually were living in a fantasy, and actually give you an incredibly strange sort of ethereal feeling, which actually the movie does when you watch it.
Why is it like this? Why is it winter now?
I'd be a powerful wizard indeed, could I answer. Suppose you tell me, Jack.
Me?
You know these woods as well as any elf. Did you not see something odd today? Any strange spirits? Did nothing untoward happen?
No.
No? No.
The day the set burned down was, I would think, about 3 weeks before coming to the end of using the Bond stage, which was the big forest. We'd been using a lot of gas in there for the fire. We just finished the fairy dance. So you have a gas line through to a bonfire. You don't have to light it each time, and you want to control it. So you just turn on gas bottles and it goes up. Well, I think what happened is the fumes gradually built in the roof, which was 70 feet up, and the roof is 350 feet long and 200 feet wide. But it's filled with a polystyrene structure which looks like a forest. And it's filled with pigeons now, because I've been in there for weeks. And every time I turn a pigeon loose, they don't come back. You don't whistle and they come back. They go into the trees and they live up there, right? So I'm in the editing room and I hear this pitter-patter down the corridor. Somebody shot past the end like a Terry Toon cartoon, came back and said, the Bond stage is on fire. So I said, you know, basically expletive, you know, right? And carried on editing. He said, no, the Bond station on fire. So I walked out down the corridor, and as I got to the end, I could see over the buildings this giant column of smoke, like a battleship was sinking, or an aircraft carrier. I walked up to the car park, and there's the whole fire brigade then. There's already 3 television helicopters up there photographing it. And all my gas bottles were exploding inside the studio, so they had steel corrugated walls. So every time a bottle went, the walls ballooned. It was kind of beautiful. And the fireman said, is this yours? And I said, yeah. He said, I think you've lost it. And I said, I think I have, mate. And I went immediately, and because this is what I always do, it's like Zen, I went and played tennis. So Arnold Milchan knew in 15 minutes the Bond station. This was like 5 a.m. in LA. And Arnold had called up saying, you know, where's Ridley? They said, he's got to play tennis. And he said, and there was a long pause, apparently. He said, you know something? He's absolutely right.
He was so practical about it. I guess when you're directing such complex stuff, you can't let yourself get hurt or get shaken like we all were. Well, he's a tough cookie. It was weird, though. I mean, to see him, okay, you know, I guess there's nothing to do. I'm going to play tennis.
It was such an interesting sight that the being upset really didn't come into it, though we were, because we were still filming. And one of the things that saddened me was that Ridley had done a test before we dressed the set of the forest set. He'd done a test where he tracked down both sides of the set, and the set was very high. It was built like in a miniature valley and banked up on either sides, and these trees stood up on the banks with this big routing systems, and the whole thing had a sort of twist to it to give some structure. And he had, it was probably about 20 foot up or 15 foot up, and he had, on a crane, had tracked down both sides of the set in a very, very wide lens, and it looked absolutely amazing, incredible it looked. And so I kept on saying to Ridley, when are we going to do this tracking shot? And he didn't answer. He just said, oh, later. And of course that very morning he'd set up for that shot, and they set up all morning, and everything was lit, and went off to lunch, and then it burnt down, so we never got it. All I have is a copy of the test, which, despite the fact it didn't have any dressing in, looks incredible.
I could watch the smoke coming out, and it was really dark. And I said, you see what I see, I think? And they looked, and everybody went boom, boom.
It really was spooky to see that, to see how horrific it was, and how, had we been on the set when that thing happened, there would have been some loss of life. There would have definitely been something.
I think what would have happened, it would have been terrible, because everybody would have got out the door, but the guys in the gantry would be in trouble, because you've got to get down. And the electricians would have been the one up top, where it can be 110 degrees up there, even with good air conditioning, sucking the heat out, because you've got all those lights, the heat's coming up. And the watchman, it's midsummer as well, so the heat of the roof, which is metal, is hot. And so all the lights are off, you open all the doors, and the watchman, the security guard, was sitting there having his sandwiches in his thermos flask in the sun. And of course, every now and again, he's got used to it now, the pigeons are flying out through the doors. They flew in. They'd fly out, get a bit of air, and go back inside, right? So now, but the whole lot coming out now, so he says, what the hell's going on? So he stood up, walked in, and he looked, and he said 2 pops, and saw a soft explosion on the roof, which then rolled all the way like a wave across the roof. And he ran outside, hit the call. It's too late. Fire engines came, and it must have been a gas buildup, residue gas. But the interesting thing was, all the pigeons got out. There's 250 pigeons on the fence staring at the Bond stage burning, thinking, first of all, they build this artificial forest, then they burn it. What the hell's going on?
The picture was originally produced with 2 companies being involved, one having the foreign rights and the other having the domestic rights. And obviously, for reasons I don't now remember, there was a decision made to go in 2 different directions.
So we ended up having 2 versions of the film, and in the 2 versions we had 2 different scores. So for the US, i.e. more rock and roll, we had the Tangerine Dream. And for the European version, because I guess I was still on the fence, I really felt that Jerry's score was good, I kept that score for Europe. And there was about 8-9 minutes difference from the 2 films. The film in the US ran shorter than Europe. And I think in the European versions, or the rest of the world versions, we may have had a more extended dance. We may have had some, the dance of death with the Gump character. We may have had a slightly more extended version of Meg Mucklebones. We were longer underneath in the halls of darkness, etc. Difference is about 8 minutes.